Hello and welcome back to Shocks Talks. I have a little bit of a scratchy throat right now. I've been sick for about 5 days and I've been home in bed. So I hope that I can make it through this without coughing. But I do have my throat coat tea right here and I'm proud of myself because I did get out of the house today and managed to go vote. So I'm rocking my sticker because it took a lot to get out with the way I've been feeling. But with all this downtime, I've been able to do a lot of reading and listening, and I've been thinking about this series and what I want to do with it. And it basically started off as a little book report to myself about the things I've learned and a way to share information with my friends. And I'm realizing now that the story has been told, the facts are out there. There's lots of resources for you to get this information. And unfortunately, all the exciting movements that seemed to be starting to happen in the government are stalling a little bit again. The Congress members were able to get in the skiff, but they weren't able to get a lot of information. There's just a lot of secrecy still. So what that made me think about was the aspect of this phenomena that deals with secrecy most directly. And for me, that's remote viewing, because remote viewers can penetrate all security and all attempts at hiding information. And that's why I decided I want to do a little breakout in this series, and I'm calling it The World of Thoughts. And we're going to talk all about remote viewing and different philosophies around the nature of reality and thought power. And I wanted to kick it off today with this book by Swami Sivananda, which is called Thought Power. Let's see if I can get it without the glare. There you go. So it's a very tiny little book, and I read it years ago and decided to look at it again because it's kind of a way of understanding the simulation theory from a more ancient Eastern perspective. So let's see where I'm at in my notes here. So although there is a lot of information available, there's also a lot of disinformation when it comes to the UFO topic. But one thing we know for sure is that there are secrets, and secrets make me curious. The episodes leading up to this cover a basic history of major events, some current movements in world governments concerning UFOs or UAP, as well as a few theories about what might be going on with aliens and Earth humans. Basically, the spectrum of theories goes from aliens are evil and humans are doomed to humans are evil and aliens will save us. Of course, there's a lot in between, and I think it's important to reflect on how we use our own simplistic thinking to frame topics that are far beyond our current understanding. For example, humans have a lot of problems in terms of racist thinking, and you can see that this type of thinking is often applied to the idea of different alien races and how some are evil and some are good. It seems like a really silly mistake to make, but it's definitely apparent when you dig deep in UFO circles. We humans should probably be focusing on our own disastrous behaviors and choices for the time being because the world is full of suffering and inequality right now. But there is a lot of good too, and things are changing all the time. And I'm grateful to be alive and safe in this moment. I'm humbled and honored to have the privilege of life in a healthy human body, and I'm committed to learning and making the most of it. When it comes to UFOs and aliens, I'm keeping an open mind and just noticing how it feels to sit in the unknown for big stretches of time, like decades. The information and questions really sink in and change within me as time goes on, and this can be observed in UFO researchers over time as well. Many who have written numerous books and given countless interviews, researchers and ufologists go through their own arcs of understanding, and no one has cracked it yet. We're all still waiting to find out more. There's a lot of speculation about the nature of reality that happens as a result of digging into this topic, and there is also an inevitable introduction to all things paranormal. Scientists like Tom Campbell, author of My Big Toe, might say that anomalous experience is a nudge from the larger consciousness system to dig deeper and be more curious about reality in general. Maybe that's why there's no easy answer when it comes to all of this, because maybe it's just a thing that happens to certain people for specific reasons, and it's just not meant for everyone. Who knows? If you want to continue learning about all the nitty-gritty details, I've left all kinds of great links in every video leading up to this, and I hope you'll take advantage of those because it's really fun stuff to consider. All right, now we're moving into the world of thoughts. This is the world of thoughts part 1. Let me take a sip of my tea. Back in 2011, I had a big shift in my own perspectives. I had a really long dark night of the soul, and I was coming back into regular reality and integrating some of my lessons. I kept thinking over and over again about how this is all just a world of thoughts. I am conscious and perceiving, but in a way, everything is just thought matter. And this is no new discovery because of the internet and all the media we have access to, it's easier than ever to consider thoughts as a real power and substance. We all have exposure to both ancient and new age thinking. Ideas around manifesting appear in pop culture, in songs, on influencer accounts. Scientists and doctors talk openly about things like the placebo effect and the healing power of our thoughts. And at the same time, we're seeing high levels of anxiety, neurotic tendencies, corrosive self-obsession, and extreme reactivity and volatility in the masses. The internet is a perfect metaphor for the world of thoughts. And I think of it as a collective psyche, or like a mirror to the collective psyche. The way I see things, we are all in a sea of consciousness. We've been broken apart into these discrete units of consciousness, as Tom Campbell would call us, and through our individuality, we are experiencing from our own perspectives, but still have access to the whole. And sometimes we're just getting data from that sea of thoughts and not even realizing how much of it is from outside the self. So there's a way of thinking in the West that would have us all believing that every thought we think is generated by our own minds. Do you think that? Have you ever thought about it? This couldn't be farther from the truth, in my opinion, but that's probably because I was raised with yogic teachings and more Eastern thought. Today we're going to start off this World of Thought series by looking at a book written in 1962 by Swami Sivananda, and this book is called Thought Power. Here is Shivananda's bio from the Vedanta Society's website linked below. So born in 1887, lived till 1963. Serve, love, give, purify, meditate, realize. A revered saint of modern times, Swami Sivananda is the inspiration behind the international Sivananda Yoga Vedanta centers. Born in South India, he served for many years as a medical doctor before renouncing worldly life and establishing an ashram in Rishikesh, North India in 1932. His mission was to serve humanity through yoga, and in 1936 founded the Divine Life Society. He developed the yoga of synthesis, an amalgamation of the 4 paths of yoga that he summarized as serve, love, give, purify, meditate, realize. He is the author of more than 300 books on all aspects of yoga, providing spiritual guidance to millions around the world. Though he never left his native India, his teachings quickly spread internationally, leaving a legacy of love, peace, and knowledge still unfolding today. Sorry for all the tea breaks, but I have to. So I think most of us know this by now, but because the physical practices of yoga have become so popular in our lifetimes, it's important to note that yogic teachings cover many topics from body and breath work to inquiry to reading scriptures, acts of service, and of course, meditation as well. Thought Power focuses on the cultivation of a yogic mind. What I like about this book is it really breaks down the way thoughts operate. If you start down a path of meditation, one of the first things you might do is to try observing your own thoughts. Starting this will launch you into a lifetime of interesting discoveries, and many who have gone down this path have written books about what they've learned. It's cool to see how, even though we all interpret our experiences through our own specific lenses, there are still overlaps and common truths emerge. And just a little note on language. In this book, Sivananda will sometimes refer to yogis as yogins, and you might have heard the word yogini in some other places as well, referring to the enlightened female, and it's all the same. So here's a quote from Sivananda from the beginning of his book. If we throw a piece of stone in a tank or pool of water, it will produce a succession of concentric waves traveling all around from the affected place. The light of a candle will similarly give rise to waves of ethereal vibrations traveling in all directions from the candle. In the same manner, when a thought, whether good or evil, crosses the mind of a person, it gives rise to vibrations in the manas, or mental atmosphere, which travel far and wide in all directions. In our exploration of aliens in UAP, the topic of telepathy came up, and we started to look a little bit at remote viewing. Well, this is pre-remote viewing language, but it's all describing the same phenomena. In Tom Campbell's work, he calls the world of thought the database, and those who remote view are accessing data from the database. Well, this is what yogis have referred to as the Akashic records. Sivananda writes, "The ether of space registers thoughts. You can move the world through thought force. Thought has great power. It can be transmitted from one man to another. The powerful thoughts of great sages and rishis of yore are still recorded in the Akasha. Yogins who have clairvoyant vision can perceive those thought images. They can read them. You are surrounded by an ocean of thought. You are floating in the ocean of thought. You are absorbing certain thoughts and repelling some in the thought world. Everyone has his own thought world." So a lot of gurus and yogis will joke that the Akasha is like the internet, but let's really think about what this means. Let's say we're in a reality where every thought that anyone has ever thought is in existence right now. They move, they travel, they transform, they flow, but they simply are. And you, as a thinker, can use your thinking mind to access anything from this world of thought, as long as you cultivate a clear intent and create enough stillness within to interpret the data accurately. If your own mind space is wild and messy, there's going to be a lot of confusion and interference. So step one is cleaning the house. First, we have to look at what is inside. Analyze it all, make some changes, learn what it means to host thoughts or to kick thoughts out of your inner sanctum. We have to learn about where the thoughts come from and where they go, and then when it comes to querying the database or accessing the Akashic records, we have to learn how to search. Just like learning to use the search function in any web browser. The art of forming the right string of search words is what will lead to finding the right information. This is the same as creating a clear intent. Many of us experience this on a regular basis as creatives because we are pulling ideas out of the ether and oftentimes simultaneously. Then the work becomes bringing the idea into existence through effort and action. Maybe if we added a few qualifiers to our internal searches, we could get even fresher ideas. For example, we might have a loose intent to pull an idea that resonates with a lot of people and will be fun to work on, but we might have forgotten to add the note to the search that says, also let this be an idea that no one else is already bringing into being right now. if we want to do something original. So the more clear we become in our own inner spaces, the more power we have when it comes to sorting through the big thought soup. This can also be applied to getting answers to life's questions, searching for guidance, and even listening to our own bodies. When was the last time you said, "Hey body, what do you need most from me right now?" It's hard to remember to do because our attention is being pulled in a million directions at any given moment. So working with the thoughts is all about coming back to center and learning to prioritize where the attention goes instead of just being pushed and pulled in the raging ocean of thoughts. So here's a couple more quotes from the book Thought Power. "A pure thought is sharper than the edge of a razor. Entertain always pure, sublime thoughts. Thought culture is an exact science. Thought can heal diseases. Thought can transform the mentality of persons. Thought can do anything. It can work wonders. The velocity of thought is unimaginable. Great yogins used to send and receive messages to and from distant persons through mind telepathy, mental radio, and thought transference. Telepathy was the first wireless telegraph and telephone service known to the world. Thought is the greatest force on earth. Thought is the most powerful weapon in the armor of a yogi. Constructive thoughts transforms, renews, and builds." So all of this is really cool to me, but one of the things that I've seen people get hung up on is why these so-called sciences or rules of reality work sometimes and not other times. For example, when it comes to healing. There are many proven cases of thoughts being able to reverse disease, and then sometimes it just doesn't work. Or with remote viewing, a person can be accurate 99% of the time, and then all of a sudden they misinterpret some data or just get something that is way off. And why does this happen? Same thing with manifesting. Some people feel really powerful and are on a roll with their manifesting, and then there's just a total flop. I think this is because there are much greater powers than the individual at play, and this is where spiritual ideas really enter in. We are not here to just get our way all the time. We're here to deal with life and learn from it. It's cool to cultivate power and try out different ways of asserting the individual will over reality at large, but ultimately these things can end up being distractions from the main goals. Or at least this is what many teachings, including yogic teachings, warn us of. So basically, it's nice to use your mind power to heal a sickness, but if sometimes it doesn't work out, maybe that sickness is just an important thing to go through, and instead of fighting it, it could be nice to just say, what is this sickness teaching me? Or what can I do from within this limited set of choices? I can choose to think about things in whatever way I want, and this is one of the greatest thought powers of all. One of the things people talk about in this day and age is intrusive thoughts, and Sivananda has a section called Victory Over Intrusive Thoughts. In it, he says, "In the beginning of your practice of thought control, you will experience great difficulty. You will have to wage war with them. They will struggle their level best for their own existence. They will say, 'We have every right to remain in this palace of mind. We have a sole monopoly from time immemorial to occupy this area. Why should we vacate our dominion now? We will fight for our birthright till the end.' They will pounce upon you with great ferocity. When you sit for meditation only, all sorts of evil thoughts will crop up. As you attempt to suppress them, they want to attack you with redoubled force and vigor, but positive always overcomes the negative." So in my own experience with meditation, and I started sitting in silence at the age of 5 because, like I said, I was raised in a yogic environment on an ashram. In my experience, this is all very true. The minute you start paying attention, the thoughts will no doubt get wild. So persistence is key. And that's why there are practices designed to go through the process of gaining control over thoughts. I think of it like bodybuilding or getting in shape when it comes to all this. You can't make a muscle overnight. No matter what, you have to put in the time, the reps, and no one can sell it to you or give you theirs. You can't steal someone else's muscle. You just have to do the work. And through that consistent work over time, you get that muscle. Well, mental muscles work the same way. And science explains this through neural pathways and patterns that are physically evident in the body and brain, which are the result of thoughts firing over time. So it's unglamorous in that way. Thought power and peace of mind are not easy to come by, but that's what makes it all so special and really strong. Because just like that muscle you build in your body over time, it can't just disappear in a day either. Once it's there, it's very real and can only diminish if the practice is released. I've gone in and out of phases of consistent meditation all my life, but I'm always coming back to it and working on developing more consistency. And it's fun. So the book Thought Power is full of practical applications, and one of these is thought substitution. You've probably heard of it and maybe even tried it, but it's a tactic for dealing with an unwanted thought. You may not be able to easily get rid of it, but through focusing on another thought, that unwanted thought can fade into the background and sometimes even disappear altogether. This is the science behind neural pathways too. The more you think certain thoughts, the stronger a neural pathway becomes, and the easier it is to slide right back into that pathway. So it takes effort and consistency to make a new pathway. But the more you do it, the easier it is to slide into that new thought pattern. And this is extremely powerful stuff for dealing with depression, anxiety, anger, and even insecurity or self-doubt. We have a lot working against us when capitalism thrives on our insecurities and fears, and so messages that reinforce those things abound. But we have a lot of choice in the matter too. Working with my own thoughts has been a huge part of this for me and very powerful. And of course, I still have tons of work to do, but it's fun, and finding success in this work motivates me to do more. One final piece from this book that I want to touch on today is about the body, and this goes back to our alien discussions around the nature of reality and theories that there are extra-dimensional beings contacting us. Sivananda says the body is not everything. There is something which is vitally important which dwells in the body. It is the spirit of man. Though identical with the cosmic spirit, it is individualized by the karmas of the individual soul. The body passes away, the spirit lives. The individuality of the spirit is there as long as the body lasts. Then it ought to return back and dissolve itself into its original source, unless, of course, it is drawn back by its associated karmas into another embodiment in order to reap them. And this is just like Tom Campbell's idea of the individuated unit of consciousness that returns to a less confined form after life and sometimes reincarnates to keep learning. If there are non-human entities that are coming into the picture of our reality, could it be that they are simply consciousness in other forms, both physical and non-physical, and that essentially we are all the same in the sense that we are choice-making units of the larger consciousness? I think so. So, those are my thoughts on thoughts for today. I made it, barely. Thank you for listening, and if you want this great little book, you can order it online or maybe find it in a used bookshop. It's really concise and pure and powerful, and there's a lot covered in this book that I didn't even touch on. So if you're starting a meditation process or just continuing your own research on the nature of reality, I highly recommend it. And I wanted to add something about powers in general, because growing up with certain yogic teachings, there was, in my community at least, there was always a big warning around trying to gain siddhis, or these powers that come with sort of like phases of enlightenment, you could say. And interestingly, remote viewing is kind of a siddhi. So the other couple of books that I'm reading that I'm going to talk about next are back to the remote viewing side of things. And I'm reading a book by Russell Targ, and I also have one by Ingo Swann. And they were both really big names in remote viewing in US history, starting, I think, in the 70s. There was a lot going on at the Stanford Research Institute. There were lots of experiments. These guys trained people. They trained every kind of person. There was nothing spiritual about it. It was basically accessing every human's innate ability to access data from the database, or basically they would train people to cultivate their ESP. And so I'm going to get into that, and I'll tell you more about like the techniques that they used and the specificity, because it's very fascinating and actually very specific in terms of the structures that they set up for themselves. There was an interviewer that would work with a remote viewer to give them guiding questions. They did a lot of like double-blind tests, and they had people going out to different locations and remote viewers reporting where they were and things like that. They tried putting people in Faraday cages and all kinds of different things to make sure that they couldn't be picking up information somehow in a sneaky way. They did experiments to make sure that people weren't getting the information from the interviewer, so they made sure the interviewer didn't even know what was behind the target, things like that. So we'll get into that on the next one. It's really interesting stuff, but I thought this would be a good foundation because it's a more ancient, I mean, this book wasn't written that long ago, but this Swami comes from a lineage of yogis who have been passing along this knowledge for a really long time. And there are many other cultures that have passed along this type of knowledge as well. And it's really foundational for all of the interesting remote viewing abilities. And I'm gonna get off now because I'm losing it and my throat is tickling. I will see you next time on Shocks Talks for another look at thoughts and thought power. And for now, just think well and be well. Thanks for listening.